everyone. Welcome to Switchblade Sisters Social Club, the true crime podcast where two friends exploit their worst fears for your entertainment.
You're welcome.
I'm Dee, a writer and podcaster.
And I'm Isla from Criminally Good Books, a true crime and crime fiction bookshop in York.
Follow us on all the socials.
Except for X, obviously.
Or have a look at our website, switchbladesisterssocialclub.com.
Check them out for all our latest episodes, events, deals, and other weird stuff.
Listeners' discretion advised.
Hola.
Hi there, how are you doing?
Good. I am doing this episode.
Why is that, Dee?
Well, because you are a perfectionist, and I love this about you. So you've got a little bit more work to do on your episode.
It's going to be a banging episode. It's going to be an absolute banging episode. Anyway, we'll see.
Of that, I have no doubt. We want to remind everyone we're going to be at CrimeCon in my new adopted hometown of Birmingham. There's a code CGB10 or SSSC10, either one.
Yeah, go with SSSC10 because this is the Switchblade Sisters Social Club podcast.
I know, but we were talking about the other one and it doesn't really matter. We're basically share one brain anyway, so...
One brain cell.
One brain cell. Yes, correct. I was looking at the map of where the venue is, the studio, and it's like really central. So...
Okay, cool.
For those of you that are coming into Birmingham, make a day of it, make a weekend of it, because it's such a cool city. Like, honestly, I know when I was telling people, oh, I'm spending a lot of time in Birmingham. Oh, I'm moving up to Birmingham. A lot of people were like, because I guess we're snobby in the south of anywhere that's not London or South Coast or whatever, right? But it's so cool. Like, it's so full of creatives and everything. Like, I love the area of Digbeth. It's kind of got like Camden in the 90s to early 2000s vibe, like lots of thrift stores and creatives and designer makers. And then you've got like, obviously the bull ring if shopping is your thing. You've got the jewelry quarter, which is obviously where you go and buy your silver and your jewelry or whatever. But it's also got loads of like really, really cute, like Instagrammable bars and restaurants and stuff that. And it's obviously got loads of canals, more canals than Venice, they'll tell you. I was asking Sam, like, did they teach you that at school? Because...
Yeah, do you have to tell everyone?
Everyone I meet from Birmingham is like, it's like, yes, I know, more canals than Venice.
Yes.
Like, Venice is really small. That's not that weird to me. But anyways.
Exactly, it's tiny.
Yeah. I think it's got like 3 canals, really. Anyways, it's just really, really cool. And it's quite small as well, so you can walk around quite easily. So all those things I just said, you kind of pretty much walk between them and the venue. So do make a weekend of it. It's so cool. Come say hi to us. We're going to be there in both our Switchblade Sister Social Club capacity as well as Criminally Good Books, because Isla, you're bringing your book stall again, which means that you'll be selling all the books from all the speakers so people can buy the books there to have signed.
And all of our books, Dee, all of our books, we're going to do all the books from the podcast that we've been talking about will all be there. Plus, they've told me to come with a selection that we want to sell that people might be interested in.
Yeah, some true crime classics, let's call them. And at the Switchblade Sister Social Club stand, we're going to have these T-shirts.
Whoop, whoop. That's so cool. I've got my jumper. I love my jumper.
Yeah. So we're going to be selling T-shirts, selling some laptop stickers and a few other bits and bobs and notebooks, that kind of stuff. So do come along and have a look and just say hi, especially if you're from the Birmingham area and you don't mind adopting me.
Do you know, I had a customer in the shop recently and she bought like 8 true crime books, which is unusual for someone to buy that many in one go. And she put them on the counter and then her husband was there and he was like rolling his eyes and I was kind of smiling and she's like, oh, just to let you know, I listened to the podcast and I'm coming to Birmingham. But I was just like so excited that I forgot to ask her name. So a lady who listens to the podcast who bought 8 books in the shop who's going to Birmingham, maybe just let us know, either message Switchblade or Criminally Good Books, because I will see you in Birmingham and I'll say hi. But it was so sweet. And she was saying to me that she goes to every crime con and she has got all the books that are always there. And she said to me, what I want is new stuff. like new stuff, not necessarily speakers, but like other stuff. So
Yeah.
I'll take that on board. But I thought that was so sweet.
Some classics and some new publications, and then some from the cases that we've covered. So there's going to be just so much. I mean, yeah, it's heaven. Before I go on to the case though, so I set up Google alerts to do with a lot of the cases that we've covered, you know, in case there's any updates. Not all of them, because some of them will not have updates, you know, but this one actually didn't come through a Google alert because it didn't even mention the case that this story came up in. But basically, you remember Danilo Restivo, the Italian serial killer, the one that killed someone in Elisa in...
Yeah, the two continents.
In Italy?
Yeah.
And then came to Bournemouth and killed his neighbor, Heather, I think her name was.
Yes,
sorry,
that's right.
Like 10 years later.
Yeah.
Do you remember when I covered that case, I also covered a few people that touched on a few cases that they thought he could be responsible for, because it's very unlikely that he killed someone at age, like, he was only, what was he, like 16, 17?
Yeah. He was really young.
So it seems unlikely, they think, the experts, that he would kill someone at that age and then wait another 10 years to kill someone else.
Yeah.
So there's other cases that he possibly could have been responsible for. And one of them was, tell me if you remember this, the South Korean student in Bournemouth. Remember I was talking about how Bournemouth had loads of students, loads of foreigners, because lots of people would go there to learn English. Because, you know, Bournemouth's really close to London. It's on the south coast. It's gorgeous. It's quite small, so it's less overwhelming than one of the bigger cities. So, of course, it got quite popular for a lot of Asian students and other foreign students to come over and learn English. It has a good university there and everything. So Jong Ok Shin was a South Korean student who was walking home from a nightclub, and she was murdered. And this lady who was a drug user came forth and said that she knew who did it. It was a few of her guy friends who were also drug users. And one of them was this guy called Omar Benguit. And in the episode, I told you about how the evidence that they convicted him on was shaky.
Okay.
Like, you know, a lot of like eyewitnesses, but from very unreliable sources. And so he's spent 23 years in prison for this murder, which, like I said, had a lot of similarities to Danilo Restivo. So I don't know if they've done it already or they're going to. BBC Panorama episode suggesting that he was framed by the police.
Oh my God. Okay. We'll have to do an update. You'll have to do an update episode. Yeah. Oh my God. How exciting.
So let's see what comes out of that, because if he's innocent of this crime, are we going back to Danilo Restivo as a possible suspect for this crime?
Remind me of the similarities again, Dee, because I remember the case, but I'm trying to think of the similarities. What was the MO?
A young girl who was walking home, so middle of the night, who was then found murdered. It was more a case of the fact that it was in Bournemouth, which is a really safe city at a time that Danilo was there, in an area that he would have been frequenting and stuff like that. Yeah. So, and also the fact that the people that were suspects of this crime and had been jailed for it, it was so
unusual.
Just not convincing, let's say. I mean, clearly people were not happy with the strength of the evidence against this guy. So where does that leave us in terms of who it really was? So I will keep you posted, because
that's really interesting.
Bonkers, isn't it? I haven't watched the BBC Panorama thing, so I will do. But following on from that, in terms of crazy tales, the one that I'm doing today, normally I have a list of crimes that I want to cover and I pick from there. But this one only got added onto the list this week. And I was like, no, do you know what? I want to do it right away. It's not a recent crime or anything. It's just, I literally had never heard of this case until it came up. You know, I follow a lot of like weird true crime stuff or bizarre history stuff on Instagram. It wasn't even a true crime account, I don't think. I think it was like one of my weird history ones. So this involved a loved one confessing to murder in order to catch the real killer.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
How interesting.
So this is the case of Nicole van den Hurk. It's one of the most gripping Dutch cold cases. Holland, I used to live there for a while before I moved here. Yeah. Lovely place to grow up. I lived there from the ages of like 4 to 7. So we used to like, even at age 7, and granted, it was like the 90s, you know, 80s, 90s.
Skipping around with flowers by the canal.
Yes. Well, I once looked on a map, because I remember we used to get home from school, get on our bikes and cycle down to the beach. Because I lived in a suburb of The Hague. And I looked on a map fairly recently to be like, because we didn't live where we were, wasn't like super close to the beach. We would be cycling like 10 kilometers away.
Age 7.
6 and 7, a group of us. And yes, we had a couple of kids who were a bit older, like 8, you know, like the neighborhood kids. We used to be like, what should we do? Let's go cycle to the beach. Parents didn't know where we're going, cycling 10 kilometers away, no mobile phones, nothing. That was just normal, right?
You are not a cold case.
I took chances that I am just shocked that I did.
Your parents don't listen to this, you said. Your dad doesn't listen to the podcast, so he'll never work out any of the dangerous things.
I told them afterwards. I was like, how is that allowed? And it's like, it was a different time. It was a suburb in a safe area of Holland and round about the time of this case. So I'm trying to set the scene here, how shocking this case would have been, you know? So basically, this is 1995, murder of Nicole van den Hurk. She was 15 years old when she disappeared on her way to work. She lived in Eindhoven. So it's not even one of the, So Eindhoven is like, I guess it's a city, but it's not one of the major cities in Holland. It's not The Hague, Rotterdam, Amsterdam. So it's not very big. It's 70 miles south of Amsterdam, 80 miles southeast of The Hague. So it's sort of in the southern part of Holland. Her case was reopened many times. But the family just had years of uncertainty until the brother went to some extraordinary lengths in order to finally get justice. Ready? Mm-hmm. Nicole van den Hurk was born on the 4th of July, 1980 in the German town of Erkelenz. So she's basically your age, right? You're a 1980s baby. She was born in Germany and her mother, Angelika Techtmeyer, I don't know if I'm saying that right. She later entered a relationship with Ad van den Hurk, and then the family moved to the Netherlands, where Angelika and Ad got married. Nicole took his surname on, so he's obviously like, if not formally adopted, then definitely made her part of their new family. The marriage didn't last long, which they rarely do, except for yours, obviously. But in 1989, Angelika and Ad got divorced. And after a custody battle, Ad was awarded custody of Nicole. So her stepdad won the custody battle. I'm guessing he must have formally adopted her. If they had a custody battle, I'm guessing the mum didn't just hand over custody. That tells me that at the very least, she's had quite an unsettled time there, right? Nicole lived through some more tragedy again then when in 1995, in April of 1995, her mother died by suicide. So again, is this linked to why the mother didn't get custody? Is it the cause? Is it the symptom? It's just so upsetting. And Nicole, who's only 15 at the time, then goes to live with her grandmother in the Eindhoven area of Tongel, or I don't know. So this poor girl, had a very unstable background, to say the least. She clearly had people who loved her in her life, I'm guessing, but, you know, there's tension there, isn't there? Nicole was described by her friends and relatives as cheerful, responsible, and hardworking. And she took a seasonal job at the supermarket in the shopping center in Eindhoven. She routinely cycled the route between her grandmother's home and the shopping center. Obviously, Holland, they love their bikes. Her uncle later recalled that she had started to feel a bit unsafe because there was someone that had harassed her only a few days before her disappearance. But she continued to go to work. And it's like, yeah, because sadly, we as women or as people cannot stop our lives just because we've got harassed by someone. I'm not coming into work today because yesterday someone harassed me, you know?
Right.
It's shitty, but it's true. So we don't know if that person that harassed her was linked to it or just a really unfortunate coincidence, right? But do you know what I was thinking about when I read that? It's really sad. I don't know if it's to do with the era, that this is like 90s where a lot of problematic behavior was more acceptable than it is now. Yeah. Or whether it's because she was 15. But like, I remember being 15, that was prime harassment time. Like, more people harassed me when I was like a teenager than they do now. And I don't know if it's because of, like I said, because it was the 90s, 2000s, where it was much more acceptable to harass women in the street.
Yeah.
or whether it's just that those people that do that shit only pick young, vulnerable women, and they would not do that to a 40-something-year-old woman, you know?
I think it's a bit of everything, Dee, because when I was in my teens, I got harassed in my 20s, like bum pinching. Like I would go to fundraising events with my work, and I work for the NHS, and I would have people going up and pinching my bum and actually putting their fingers like up your bum while you're like at a fundraising event, or like slapping your bottom. And it's like the first time I was so shocked, and the guy said to me, what? He was like 20 years older than me. And it was just like, it's horrible. We call it out more now, and does it happen as much? I don't know.
I hope not. And the other one that always gets me is the hug, where the hand either goes down onto the butt or up onto the side boob is another one, isn't it?
Oh, I've not had that. So I'm very grateful that I've not had that. No.
Yeah, well. Anyways, poor Nicole had got harassed on her way to work. Don't know if it's related to what happens to her later, but, you know, she was definitely a bit more on guard or on edge, let's say. So on Friday, the 6th of October, 1995, Nicole set out before dawn on her bicycle for her early shift at the shopping center, the supermarket. But she never arrived. And by that evening, the police had found her bicycle in the river, in the Dommel River.
No.
I know. 13 days later, on the 19th of October, her rucksack, her backpack was discovered near the canal in Eindhoven. So police divers began searching the canal and the banks, but they didn't find any more signs of Nicole or any of her belongings. During the following few weeks, police received hundreds of tips. On the 24th of October, there was an anonymous man who phoned the police claiming he could identify the killer, but he hung up. And for some reason, like a few of the sources mentioned this call, because I was like, well, that just sounds like a hoax to me. But
yeah,
they seem to think that there was, I don't know whether he said something that indicated that maybe he did know, because he kind of just said, from the sounds of it, I know who the killer is, and then hangs up. And they even played a recording of this call on national TV in January of 1996 in an attempt to identify him, you know, so if anyone could recognize his voice or anything, so they could track him down and be like, oh, you know how you said you knew the killer? Do you want to give us a name?
Yeah, exactly.
Nothing came of that. And then finally, 22nd of November, 1995, nearly 2 months after she disappeared, a passerby found Nicole's remains in a wooded area. So she was found murdered. There was about 1,000 people who attended her funeral in this fairly small city, which just goes to show how it affected the community, I think. The autopsy that they did revealed that she had been stabbed. She had suffered a fatal stab wound to the ribs, 2 jaw fractures, and injuries to her head and her fingers. So she'd been through it, you know. At first, investigators really struggled to find leads. Bear in mind, this is in 1995, so we're early days of DNA and all that kind of stuff. On the 24th of October, again, like I said, that was when they'd got the anonymous call that they hung up. The following February, a friend of the Van den Hurk family, who was then being held for drug trafficking, claimed he had been forced to smuggle heroin by men involved in Nicole's killing. Police dismissed his testimony as unreliable. So this must have raised questions sorry, do the family have links to the drug world? Was it a message or some
weird
thing that, you know, something to do with that? They must have looked into that, right? Even if they dismissed this guy as being unreliable. There's a Dutch magazine, Passie, offered a reward for information. And in May and June 1996, so the following year, Nicole's stepfather, Ad, remember, and her stepbrother, so must have been a kid from previous relationship, were arrested, but later cleared. So I guess this was because it was almost a year later. I guess it was the police getting desperate. We know that quite often when a woman is killed, it is someone they know.
In the family, yeah.
Exactly. So it just seems bizarre because you would have thought normally what they try to do is they look at those people first and try to either convict them or eliminate them as soon as possible. What happened in the following year that made them arrest them? I don't know. I couldn't find that out. But in any case, they were cleared almost instantly.
Okay.
Over time, as what happens with cold cases, the investigation team dwindled. And eventually there was only 4 detectives on the case and the case went cold. So I'm guessing these 4 detectives are not even on this case full time anymore. And then in 2004, which is almost 10 years after the murder, a cold case team reviewed the file, but found no new information, no new leads or whatever. So the case remained cold. And then in 2011, with the investigation stalling for more than 15 years, this is when there was a dramatic development that occurred.
Okay.
And I love this so much, but I hate it so much that it had to happen. Let me take an opportunity to show some pictures, okay? Just bear with me.
Okay, cool. We love pictures.
Yeah, I've got a picture of Nicole.
Oh my God, she's stunning. Not that that makes a difference.
She looks like a stunning, gorgeous young lady, right? You could tell she's a very young teenager. I'd probably guess maybe 16, 17, 18. So she looks a little bit older, maybe. I don't know.
She's got 80s hair, hasn't she? Like 80s, 90s. It was a thing of the time to have like big hair, like Bros and stuff. Like, I mean, she's stunning. Absolutely.
So she's clearly
girl.
got like long, gorgeous, sort of light brown, sandy hair. She's got green eyes, big lips, really, really pretty. And as her friends had described her, reliable, hardworking, fun, sociable. So she just looks awesome. And then we're talking about her brother. This picture is a little bit later. This isn't 1995 era photo, but this is Andy Vanden Hurk. Very handsome guy. He's got like buzz cut hair, strong jaw, bluish eyes, I'm guessing, and big eyebrows. Looks like just a solid dude, doesn't he?
Yeah. I would say a dude. That's the right word.
So I'm going to tell you where he factors in. So obviously his stepsister, Nicole, disappeared, found murdered. I'm guessing he was a good few years older than her. And by 2011, when we pick up the story again, he is actually living in England. And he was really frustrated that his sister's case had remained unsolved. They're stepbrother and stepsister, but they clearly were close enough that he refers to her as his sister, which I think is beautiful, right? So you know what he does on the 8th of March, 2011?
No.
He posted a confession on Facebook. I will be arrested today for the murder of my sister. I confess. So British police arrested him, and after extradition, he was handed over to Dutch authorities. And the reason why he did this was to draw fresh attention to his sister's case.
Bonkers. Interesting.
Crazy. This was the thing that came up on Instagram. Brother confesses to his sister's murder in order to get her body exhumed to do fresh DNA tests.
Oh, clever.
I mean, so clever, so risky, right? Could backfire.
He could be massively fined for all of that.
Yeah, exactly. At the very least, they could be like, well, false confession charges. I don't know if that's a thing, blah, blah, blah. But like, I have so much admiration for this guy who literally was like, I will do anything to get justice for my sister. And he clearly thought about all these things and was like, fuck it, it's worth the risk. So let's see if this paid off, this risk. So Andy was released just 5 days later because the confession was the only evidence against him. It sounds a bit crazy, but it makes sense. You can't charge someone just purely on a confession.
Yeah.
So even if I come in and I'm like, I genuinely killed 20 people, I'm telling you I did it, that is not enough to actually arrest me and detain me and convict me.
Yeah, because a lot of people do it because they're trying to protect their relatives, don't they? Like mother will say, I did it when she knows it's the son, or, you want to protect your family member.
Yeah. You can't charge anyone just on what one person says usually. So, convict them anyway. He later admitted that the confession was false. In a 2016 interview, so 5 years after this, he explained that he wanted to get enough attention back on the case to get Nicole's body to be exhumed so DNA testing could be performed, because obviously there's been a lot of advancements in the meantime in DNA evidence. So he said, I wanted to get her exhumed and get DNA off her. I kind of set myself up. She's my sister, absolutely. I miss her every day. I know. And Andy's confession achieved its goal. In September 2011, authorities exhumed Nicole's remains for new DNA analysis, and the case was officially reopened. A new cold case team began to work, and the reward for information increased to €15,000. And within a week, police announced they had found foreign DNA on the remains and received more than 20 new tips. So...
But I don't understand why that DNA wasn't there in the first place.
You know, it's not just that we can do different kinds of tests now, but also the amount of DNA required is so much smaller.
Got you. Yeah. Okay. That would make sense.
So it might have been missed. It might not have been able to be extracted at the time.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but obviously he had been following, like 1995 was so early days in DNA testing. They clearly missed stuff, or, you know, maybe they took samples, but they'd been already degraded or used in testing, so they didn't have any more. I don't know. But obviously this raises a lot of complex ethical issues, right?
Yeah.
About Andy's false confession. I think everyone can agree that he had totally honorable intentions with it, even though he was putting himself at massive risk, because the stepbrother is a very possible suspect for a case, you know?
Exactly.
He really put himself on the line. I don't know how confident he was in being cleared, you know, like how strong his alibi was. You know, I don't know how high the risk was of him actually being convicted of it, you know. But basically, he forced their hand into reopening the case because there would have been a public outcry, which would have put pressure on the police focusing on this cold case in particular. And that led them to be able to apply modern forensic science techniques to this. It's interesting, isn't it? Would you do it? I think I would in a heartbeat if I thought it would work or if it had a chance of working. But obviously it's a very brave thing and you never know how you're going to react. Yeah. So let's go back to the exhumation and whether this gamble paid off. They did exhume the body, which must be no easy thing for the family. Obviously it's not like he wants his sister's remains to be disturbed, but it's like, if we're going to find out who did this, it's the only chance at this point, you know, 15 years after the murder. When they recovered the body back in 1995, remember, she had been exposed to the elements for nearly 7 weeks. There were 3 DNA samples that were collected, 2 from the genital area and 1 from her underwear. But because of decomposition and the rudimentary collection techniques of the time, these samples were high risk of contamination. Then on top of that, for years, these samples remained untested. After the 2011 exhumation, scientists used contemporary probabilistic genotyping programs to examine the complex mixed samples. I don't know whether that means they got more samples off of the body or whether they're still using the ones collected back in the day or a combination of the two. But experts from the Independent Forensic Services, the Netherlands Forensic Institute, and the Institute of Environmental Science and Research in New Zealand, and the US company Cybergenics participated. So this was, I mean, I guess they each do slightly different thing, a different testing, a different, I don't know. They used a bunch of different softwares because apparently there's different DNA softwares. I mean, makes sense, but I'd never thought about it. True Allele, LR Mix Studio, MixCal, and STR Mix to infer individuals' profiles from the mixture. So they know they've got potentially three different people's DNA that's not Nicole's. So they're trying to figure out whose DNA goes to which, if that makes sense. The analysis detected 2 clear male DNA profiles.
2.
One matched her boyfriend, and the other matched an unknown individual. There were also additional peaks that did not conclusively match either profile. So this means there could potentially have been a third person's DNA, or this might be just inconclusively attached to the other 2 DNA. They weren't entirely sure. So is it 3 people's DNA on her, or is it just 2 is the question.
Love a good murder? Come visit me, Isla, at Crimley Good Books in York, your one-stop shop for crime fiction and true crime reads, as well as gifts and author events. Or browse online at crimleygoodbooks.co.uk.
But here's where it all turns on its head, right? The cold case team compared the unknown profile. So they must have eliminated the boyfriend. I'm sure they looked at the boyfriend at the time because, again, it's a very obvious. Yeah, but they clearly eliminated it before. So that one is a no-go. But obviously, who is this other person's clear DNA that they have managed to find? It matches a similar rape case nearby in the year 2000. So 5 years after Nicole's murder. The perpetrator had been convicted in 2001 after attacking a young woman on her bicycle at knife point. So again, a young woman, knife point, Nicole was stabbed. The similarities prompted detectives to compare the DNA from that case to the Nicole van der Hurk samples. And so on the 14th of January, 2014, they arrest a 46-year-old man when his DNA matched both the semen and the mitochondrial DNA profiles found on Nicole's remains and clothing. So we finally have a suspect in custody. This is another part of the case which, like, I totally understand and I want to agree with, but still feels really unfair. And this is that Dutch privacy laws prevented the media from using this man's full name. I Googled why this happens, and it's basically to protect them before they're charged, before they're convicted and charged, and, you know, before they're convicted, basically, in case they are innocent. I get that.
Of course. Yeah.
Because, you know, mud sticks, as they say, and especially in cases like Colin Stagg, the Wimbledon common murder, even though he was acquitted, because they didn't find the actual perpetrator until, like, I think a decade later, people still thought it was him. That had committed that murder.
Exactly. And it ruins people's lives. You know, you have to make sure that you're sure.
But I was a bit confused about why this person is basically allowed anonymity even after they're convicted of this crime.
Oh, he was convicted.
Yeah. So I get why you would keep people anonymous before they are actually convicted of a crime. But afterwards, a lot of cases, they still have anonymity to prevent permanent stigma and to help them reintegrate into society after they've served their time.
No.
So this is where I'm like, I find it really difficult because, like, I totally agree with rehabilitation because it's the best for everyone, right? You don't want career criminals. You want them to do their time, to gain skills or something in prison, to be able to come back into community and be law-abiding citizens. That's better for everyone. None of us want to be victims of crime. And I totally get how being anonymous would enable you to do that more. And I totally agree with it when the perpetrator is a child, you know, like we have that a lot.
Yeah.
That the people's identities are hidden when they were children as you know, when they committed the crimes. I get that because even when they've done horrendous crimes, they should be treated differently than an adult who's committed the same crime. But at the same time, it's like, this guy like raped and murdered?
More than once.
Yeah.
It's a pattern of behavior, Day. He was a 30-year-old man when this happened. If he is the perpetrator, well, he is the perpetrator. He was 31, was he? And then 30, and she was 15.
He was like late 20s. Yeah. So I think that's the part that I find difficult is the nature of this crime that would be applied to. I think I could understand it more if it was like your first offense, maybe, or a lesser offense, but your first offense. And if it was judged that you actually genuinely have a chance for reintegration, I don't know. But I found that really difficult. As much as I can totally understand the logic, in this case, I just struggled with it. Yeah. Anyway, maybe we need to have more of a chat on this or get someone in to come and talk to us about this because, like, I'm fascinated by it. You know how I love the idea of, like, we talk about the rehabilitation stuff all of the time. And again, not from a point of sympathy for the perpetrators. Rarely is it that. It's more from the point of if people are coming back out into our society, we want them to not commit crimes against us, you know?
Exactly.
And it just seems in this case like really unfair because the victims are named, the rape victims, the murder victims, you know, not that they should have anything to be ashamed of, but they will be known and linked to these cases for their whole lives, if they're still alive, because he hasn't fucking murdered them, you know?
They'll have scumbags that will drag their names through the dirt. Like if you're a rape victim, the majority of people would have a huge amount of sympathy for you, but there'll be those people that live off the horrendous crimes that happen to other people and will want to make them feel shit and say that they're liars. So, I mean, why does that happen to innocent people when people that are very clearly convicted get anonymity? I just think it's
bizarre. It's bizarre. It just reminded me, I remember when it happened at the time, and I can't remember what country or anything, but I just had a reel on Instagram pop up about, it was an exhibition of clothes that women were wearing when they got raped. Because remember, I don't know if it still happens, but it definitely happened at the frickin' time where one of the first questions was always like, how drunk were you? What were you wearing? Implying like, are you partly responsible?
Were you asking
Did you lead
for
them
it?
on? Were you asking for it? Like total victim shaming. And what was fascinating about this exhibition was like, yeah, okay, there were a few short dresses. Some people do get sexually assaulted when they're out on the town or whatever. But most of the outfits were like tracksuit bottoms. You know what I mean? Or like jeans and a jumper. Like it is not ever going to be to do with what you were wearing.
Yeah, completely.
So I don't remember ever reading anything of someone saying it was what she was wearing that motivated me. Maybe that's not true, but in any case, it shouldn't fucking matter. So we're going to call him Jos de G. Jos de G is the anonymous name that he went by. I don't know if it's his real name and just like initial of his surname, but that's all we know him by. So Jos de G was already known to the authorities. Like I said, he'd previous convictions for 3 rapes. So you're right. Total pattern, and had been subject to preventative detention and compulsory treatment. Investigators learned that he had left his ex-girlfriend's home shortly before Nicole's disappearance, meaning that it was possible that he was near the scene at the time that she disappeared. After the arrest, both prosecution and defense prepared for the trial. The defense argued that the DNA evidence was inconclusive and that Nicole may have had consensual sex with him before her death. The presence of DNA from her boyfriend, as well as the ambiguous peaks, they argued, made it impossible to prove beyond reasonable doubt that the G was responsible for her death. So let me reiterate. They're saying that shortly before or after having consensual intimate relations with her actual boyfriend, this 15-year-old on her way to work or soon before had sex with a much older man than herself, consensually also.
Reasonable doubt. That's what they're going for. They're trying to get him off. Is there not a rule around, is there not something around probability? So, you know, what's the likelihood of this happening? Because like beyond reasonable doubt, but also it's like, obviously this is not the kind of normal thing that would happen. So where do you...
Like, again, on our way to work as well. I mean, I don't know, but it's just like, wow, you're clutching.
Oh, clutching at straws, big time.
Yeah. I don't know whether it was revealed in this court trial that he was already convicted of 3 previous rapes. Because you know how sometimes they're like, oh, we can't use his previous convictions because that'll prejudice the jury.
Yeah.
And other times they agree that it's like, well, this is something he does, you know? But the trial basically opened on the 2nd of November, 2015. So that's 20 years after her killing. Prosecutors charged the G with rape and manslaughter. The murder charge had already been reduced. Presumably, they thought they were more likely to secure a manslaughter charge than a murder charge, you know?
Because it wasn't premeditated.
Exactly. Prosecutors presented the DNA evidence and argued that the Joss could not have had consensual sex with Nicole because there was no time for another relationship, you know, intimate session after she had seen her boyfriend. Presumably they'd gone to the boyfriend and be like, well, can you tell us when you had intercourse with her? You know, how did your DNA get, you know, there? Witnesses testified that Deji had confessed to killing a girl years earlier while they were in a psychiatric institution. One witness recalled that Deji said he had strangled a girl who laughed at him. He admitted having sex with her and killing her because she ridiculed him. Another witness stated that Deji boasted he had committed murder and had not been arrested. Now, obviously, the defense team attacked these accounts, saying that the witnesses were either people at a psychiatric institution, so potentially not reliable, or motivated by the €15,000 reward. So Deji himself maintained that he did not kill Nicole. He said that he did have sex with her and it was consensual. But he said that if he did have sex with her, it would have been consensual, but he could not remember it, which even if that is true, is gross because he's in his late 20s and he can't remember if he had sex with a kid or not, basically a child. And you know what that means? Oh, I don't know if I was a pedophile or not that day.
Well, exactly. It's the kind of thing that you'd want to defend. I don't remember it, but I'm not a pedophile. He didn't say that. He's like, oh, you know, if I did, I don't remember it. It's just so sad. And her family having to go through this.
Hear this shit, right? And going back to that photo of her, I would struggle to think she was 18. I don't know what the age of consent is in Holland in the 90s, to be fair. But he was 28, 29, 30 at the time, and she was clearly like a teenage girl. So scientific testimony focused on the DNA mixture. April 2016, experts told the court that it was 2.28 million times more likely that the G was one of the contributors than an unrelated person. However, the ambiguity of the peaks, remember these anonymous peaks that could have been a third person or could have been some degradation and they were part of the other two, meant that scientists could not exclude the possibility of another contributor. And remember, the G is not denying that he could have had sex with her. So he's trying to neutralize the DNA evidence, right? And saying, well, yeah, maybe I did have sex with her, but I didn't kill her. So on the 21st of November, 2016, after almost a year of hearings, the court found Josh DeG guilty of rape.
Good.
But acquitted him of manslaughter. So I don't know whether that means, I mean, they obviously thought he'd had sex with her, but it wasn't consensual, whether they thought it was like statutory rape or violent rape. So he receives a 5-year prison sentence. The judges concluded that the DNA evidence and witness testimony proved that DeG raped Nicole, but did not conclusively prove he caused her death. They noted that DNA from an unidentified person was also present, and this raised reasonable doubt. And I hate this because I get what they're saying. It could also mean he had an accomplice.
Or it could mean that he had other DNA on him. Like, I don't quite understand. Like,
it's so sad. And again, the family must have been like, so she got raped and then murdered by a separate person immediately after that had nothing to do with this guy. That is a bizarre timeline, isn't it?
Yeah, and what are the chances of that? That's the other thing, going back to my probability point. What are the chances of that happening? She's on her way to work. What was the time? Like early in the morning?
Yeah, it was still dark and she's on her way to work. And so they think that she, in a short space of time, had consensual sex with her boyfriend, left the house, had got raped by DeG, and then carried on her way and got murdered by someone entirely different, is what that must mean. If they're saying that he raped her but didn't murder her. The decision quite rightly sparked outrage, as it did just here now when I read it to you. Nicole's family believed the verdict undervalued the DNA evidence, and someone even shouted in the court at the time that the outcome was unbelievable. Critics also noticed that DeG had already spent 2 years in prison during all of this, so he could basically be released in 3 years. He'd already served 2 of the 5-year sentence. It's one of these cases where, you know how we're so paranoid as fairly law-abiding citizens of accidentally breaking the law? And then these people are going around committing the most heinous crimes, and it's a struggle to get them in jail for them?
He lawyered up.
So the public prosecution appealed the manslaughter acquittal almost immediately. So they were like, hang on a minute, you know he did this. The appeal hearings began on the 28th of August, 2018, and concluded in early October. So on the 9th of October 2018, the appellate court overturned the acquittal and convicted Josh DeG of both the rape and the manslaughter.
Oh, good.
Well done, appeals court. The judges accused him of forcing a young girl into sex and then killing her to conceal the crime. So whether she fought back, whether she recognized him, I don't know. He clearly has a pattern of rape, and something happened here where he murdered her also. So they sentenced him to 12 years imprisonment. It's rare that we hear about the prosecution going to the appeals court. We hear more on these true crime podcasts about someone being convicted and going to the appeals court to overturn that conviction. Whereas here it's the prosecution going to the appeals court to try to get the conviction in the first place that was acquitted. So the appeal judges explained that the ambiguous DNA peaks were likely due to the contamination or degradation. They found no evidential value in the unknown DNA trace. They emphasized that DeG had hidden Nicole's body and that his prior convictions for very similar attacks supported the inference that he killed to silence her. Nicole's disappearance and murder were recounted again during the appeal, so the family had to go through it all again.
Well done, her brother.
It was worth it to get this outcome. Media reports reminded the public that she had left her grandmother's house on the 6th of October 1995, never arrived to work, that her bicycle and her backpack were found near the waterways, and her body was discovered under branches in a forest nearby 7 weeks after. And the Dutch Supreme Court then upheld the 12-year sentence on the 16th of June 2020, concluding that the possibility of an additional contributor was highly unlikely. So, after 25 years, Nicole's family finally heard a verdict that held someone responsible for both the rape and the murder of their beloved Nicole Vanden Hurk, who was known for her friendly disposition and her sense of responsibility. And the fact that she braved the dark early morning hours to cycle to work for a holiday job demonstrated her independence. Her death shattered her family and really united and galvanized the community. In the decades that followed, Nicole became a sort of emblematic of unsolved crimes and the need for persistent investigation. And Andy's role, her brother, in the case is both controversial, but I think we can agree, compelling. Out of loyalty and probably extreme frustration, he used deception to bring attention to the case. He falsely confessed, risked incarceration and public scorn and personal trauma, yet he believed the risk was necessary to force the exhumation and modern DNA testing. And his subsequent public statements, in which he emphasized his love for his sister and his desire for closure, revealed the depth of his family's pain. Andy's gamble succeeded. Without his confession, the case might have not been reopened when it was. So Nicole's case drew international attention because it showcased like a bunch of new techniques, probabilistic genotyping, as a way of sort of interpreting complex DNA mixtures and all of these different softwares and whatnot, and the fact that they were using a bunch of different companies as well. But it also highlighted the limitations of forensic science. The DNA samples were at the risk of contamination due to the time and the environmental exposure. There were ambiguous peaks that did not conclusively match any known profile, and these ambiguities fueled speculation about other suspects and nearly resulted in the G being let off this crime entirely. So it was only through appeals and additional expert testimony and statistical analysis that the courts became confident that these unknown peaks in the DNA were not evidence of another killer. So Nicole's murder devastated her family. Obviously, her grandmother, who'd been caring for her, had lost both her daughter, Nicole's mother, and granddaughter within 6 months. Nicole's stepfather, Ad van der Hurk, faced suspicion during the initial investigation and was arrested and later cleared. And I'm sure that the brother and the father faced suspicion for a lot longer while they were waiting to find.
Oh, yeah.
They're dealing with the trauma and the grief and the loss, as well as probably the suspicions and whatever impact that might have had. He attended hearings for years, hoping for justice. In 2016, in an interview on television, he called the suspect a monster and expressed outrage at the initial 5-year sentence. So yeah, there's like a bunch of ethical and legal questions that come out of this. There's the false confession. It's clearly not right, in quotation marks, to make false confessions. You could argue that obviously false confessions are usually a waste of police time and resources.
Yeah.
This is one of the rare cases where it forced attention back on the case and actually led to a conviction, not of the person that confessed, which is bizarre. I hate that it had to happen. He shouldn't have had to do that. And yet, how can you argue that it was bad that he did it?
Did the brother end up facing any time in jail? Like, obviously he'd be arrested, but he wouldn't be convicted. You know, he'd be taken in for questioning.
I'm sure there was a conversation. He spent 5 days in jail before they released him. And I'm sure there was a conversation about whether or not to charge him with anything. And I'm guessing they either said, let's wait until this plays out before we look at, we can't be seen to be going for the brother for such a minor thing in comparison to his sister being raped and murdered when we've not found the rapist and the murderer, I'm guessing. And that maybe because it actually led to a conviction, they were like, look, we're going to look like total dicks. It's going to be a waste of a lot of resources, making a case against him, going to trial, whatever. Sometimes they agree to just let a case drop. And I hope that that's what happened in this one.
That was amazing. That was amazing.
So, yeah, like I said, I was just gripped when I saw that a brother falsely confessed to get his sister's body exhumed for DNA testing. I mean, what a hook that I've now stolen for this episode. And I love that it was set in Holland. I don't think we've had a Dutch case Oh, no, we have had a case in Holland. I don't know, maybe in a hotel in Holland. I also was able to use some of my Dutch newspapers,
You're so
as well
clever.
as All That's Interesting, the Express.com, Nederlands Times. Yeah, mainly those. What a fascinating case.
Bonkers story.
Yeah, it was, I'm not trying to show off, but it was much easier researching this case, knowing a bit of Dutch, like, because
Right,
I'm
okay.
Flemish Belgian. So I think that's why us in the English speaking world don't know very much about this case, because most of the sources were not in English. So do you want a palate cleanser?
Yes, please, Dee. I would love one.
I feel more positive at the end. I still need a palate cleanser
Yes.
because that was a fucking awful case, but I feel really proud of them.
I know. And it kind of must feel that they're your, like, kinsmen. Is that the right word? Like, I know they're not, but it's like because you lived there, and it's like, because that would have happened about, 5-7 years before you were there?
So 1995, I left Holland in 1990 to move here.
Oh, right.
So it's a few years. But, you know, it's like very similar era to living there.
Yeah.
It's very similar age. She was a very similar age to us. You know, some of them just, you relate more because you've got more points in common, right? Yeah. And it's just like, I just think that's a beautiful thing that her brother did. And I just think that's just lovely. So it's just, it's weird to have warm, fuzzy feelings telling a story of such a horrendous murder, but it does have some of that warm, fuzzy feeling in that the love there is so beautiful.
Yeah.
But just how fucking horrendous that you had to do that. But yeah, so we do need a palate cleanser because it is really, really sad. But at least they finally got justice. And I hope that that's helped them a little bit with some closure, if not the pain and the grief, but at least some sort of answers, I guess. Answers, right? So today, my quiz is false confessions and dodgy admissions quiz.
Ooh.
I did it, but did I? I had real fun with this one. It was amazing. So, question 1. Approximately how many people falsely confess to being Jack the Ripper? Is it A, 3, B, 12, C, over 100, or D, 1,000?
Oh, I'm going with 1,000.
That would be a lot, but it is C, over 100 people confess to being Jack the Ripper.
Jeez, oh. I mean, what? Still confess? I mean, he's dead.
Yeah, I'm guessing around about the time, but can you imagine?
Yeah. Oh,
and that's not even including all the people that are like, oh, I think it's my dad, my uncle, my brother, my whatever. Okay, question 2. In the Lindbergh baby kidnapping, 1932, this was famous baby kidnapping, how many people falsely confessed? Another one. A, 5, B, around 200, C, around 50, or D, none?
I'm going to go with A3.
It was A5, but anyways, it's wrong. It was, it was B. Over 200 people falsely confessed to the Lindbergh case.
Why?
Well, question 3. Why do people sometimes falsely confess? A, police pressure. B, mental illness. C, desire for attention. Or D, all of the above?
A.
All of the above. So maybe not necessarily all at the same time, you know?
Yeah.
But it can be a combination of police pressure, mental illness, desire for attention, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, obviously they can use tactics like prolonged interrogations. Some people do have a desire to are attention seeking. Some people may eventually be confused. Like there's so much work on like coercive, suggestive techniques and so forth. But it's horrifying because question 4. What percentage of wrongful conviction cases overturned by DNA evidence in the US involved false confessions? So this is a case where someone's charged and convicted, but it's overturned by the DNA evidence. So the DNA evidence proved that it was a wrongful conviction. And how many of those cases involved a false confession? A, around 5%. B, around 15%, C, around 25%, or D, around 50%?
I think B. Was it 15?
It's C, around
No.
25%.
No
So what
way,
does that actually
Tilly.
mean? Yeah, this is from the Innocent Project. Roughly 1 in 4 people in the United States who are later proven innocent through DNA testing originally confessed to the crime. So basically falsely confessed. And again, it could mean
That they were pushed into it by the police and
so they admitted their guilt. Their confession was used in court. They were convicted of the crime, but they were actually innocent. And again, the reasons why they might have falsely confessed were back in question 3, police pressure, mental illness, or other vulnerabilities,
Oh gosh.
or some sort of desire for attention. That's why it's terrifying, false confession. It's actually a huge problem. And this is why also it's rare that they will convict someone purely on their own confession only. You need to have actual physical evidence of some kind to go with that.
Gosh.
Which serial killer received letters from strangers claiming to be the real killer? A, Ted Bundy. B, the BTK killer. C, the son of Sam. Or D, all of the above.
Yeah, I'm going to say all of the above.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So some people are falsely confessing to the actual murderers.
Do you know what? They're only doing that because they know that those killers won't get out. If they thought that there was any chance of them getting out and finding them, because like loads of killers, like they want to be caught, they want the fame.
And I mean, I suppose there's a terrifying world where A, there's serial killers that exist, but B, that maybe some of these killers, serial killers in jail, have been convicted of some of the murders they were convicted of were not actually their own. They got lumped in.
Possibly.
And maybe someone else was
They should still be in jail though.
Yeah, for sure. But there is a world where they get credit in quotation marks for a murder that isn't actually theirs. And so someone writes to them for some reason in prison and goes, hey man, that one was mine. But I don't think that's this. I think that this is someone writing to the son of Sam being like, but I'm the son of Sam? People are strange, as the Doors said.
People are strange.
Yeah. So there you go. That
was amazing, Dee. That was absolutely amazing. And I'm so pleased for that family that they got justice in the end. And I'm just so pleased, like the way that you told it, I was thinking he's not going to jail for any length of time. It's not great, the sentencing, but at least he's in jail.
Yeah, I mean, he still got off light in my mind. All right, well, on that note, I'm going to go off and have lunch with my nephew. What about you?
Amazing. I'm going to do some work on my episode. I'm going to work on my super quiz.
I can't wait. I can't wait because you are the reason why we do the quiz, because you did a quiz.
Yeah, my quiz is going to be, interesting.
Okay, cool. Well, on that note, love you. Love our sexy listeners.
Absolutely.
And see you next week.
See you next week. Bye, 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 bye.
Like this episode? Want more? Come visit me, Isla, at Crimley Good Books in the heart of York. We're an independent bookshop dedicated entirely to crime. From cosy mysteries to gritty thrillers, historical whodunits to juicy true crime. We've got signed editions, special gifts and plenty of recommendations for your next obsession. We also host a bunch of awesome author events. Can't make it in person? Visit us online at crimleygoodbooks.co.uk.